Good afternoon and welcome to Agrifood Conversations brought to you by iSelect, the Van Trump Report, the Yield Lab Institute, and Family Farms Group. My name is Luke Wazenchuk, an analyst on the iSelect team, and I'm excited to welcome you all to today's call. On today's Agrifood Conversations call, we are joined by Camille Delebecq, PhD, co-founder, and CEO of Afineur. Afineur is designing microbiomes, selecting and teaming up microbes for their ability to naturally improve food nutritional value, taste, and texture through fermentation. Its technology platform uses the latest advances in biotechnology and food science to transform fermentation into a process that is economical, sustainable, and can be tailored to naturally improve specific characteristics of a food product. Each of you knows companies are more likely to succeed with the right network of customers, talent, investors, and advisors. We've invited you to this call because you are some of the smartest, most talented people in Afineur's market. You are potential customers for Afineur's products and services. You built and sold a company like Afineur, or you are a sophisticated business person who understands Afineur's market and the challenges they may face. Before we get started, we have a quick poll question to get a better idea of who we have on the line today. Please take a few seconds to answer. A few process comments. We're not soliciting investment. This presentation is to provide information about Afineur's products and services to help them find customers, mentors, and other strategic relationships that can help them grow their business. You are all on mute. You can use the chat window to ask a question. After the formal part of the presentation, we will answer as many questions as time allows. This presentation is being recorded and will be available for replay. So without further delay, I'm pleased to introduce Camille Delebecq, PhD, co-founder and CEO of Afineur. Go ahead, Camille.
Thank you, Luke, for the introduction, and thanks for iSelect for the opportunity to talk to you all. So really excited to be here. So the first part is going to be, as Luke was mentioning, a few slides of presentation, about 15-20 minutes, and then I'll be more than happy to take all of your questions and have a discussion with you all. All right, so let me figure out how to move forward on this presentation. So Afineur. So a little bit of background on the company. I founded the company about 5 years ago as one of the first company that was looking at leveraging a lot of these new technologies that were arriving in biotechnology and in the field of microbiome science specifically to address some specific challenges around plant-based foods. The two specific challenges that we're addressing is one that is around sustainability and nutritional value. So there's a real need right now for better plant-based food that are more nutritious, that can compete better with animal-based meat, food that are more sustainable, healthier, and tastier, really to just reduce our dependence on animal protein. This is one of the core founding value and mission that Afineur has been addressing for the past 5 years using microbes. The other thing that we've started to address more recently over the past 2 to 3 years was to find opportunities around food waste and really start to look at food waste as new opportunities for microbiome technologies to extract and improve specific plant-based ingredients that can be useful for many types of applications. So we'll dive a little bit in both of these applications, and I'll also present some of the technologies that we're leveraging, and a little bit more about some of the products that we've been already we've been bringing to market already. So yeah, the core platform behind Afineur is an R fermentation. So there's a really interesting thing that's been happening over the past 10 to 20 years that both precipitated my personal journey into exploring food fermentation, but also I think is starting a wave of new companies that are really leveraging fermentation as tools to really disrupt the whole food and ag industry. So those two small or big revolutions, I think, are one on the first side, on the technological side of things. You know, there's been over the past 10, 15 years with synthetic biology and all the microbiome and sequencing applications alongside with AI, there's been a whole wealth of new technologies that can be leveraged to transform food fermentation into something that is controllable and understandable, and that can be applied a la carte onto many commodities or ingredients or byproducts to improve their value, the nutritional value and their taste profile and their functional characteristic as well. That's what we call smart fermentation here on this slide. I'll dive into that over the next few slides. The other small revolution that I wanted to point out, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as well later on, is a small revolution on the consumer side. Consumers are starting to ask for natural solution, natural low processed foods, and fermentations are taking kind of like center stage as one of the really interesting solutions, bringing those new types of food products. And that's been happening thanks to, I think, kind of like a change in people's mind, people's perception towards traditional food processing, but also towards microbes that are not seen anymore as enemies in our everyday life or in our health, but that can be seen as allies. And that's been kind of like influenced a lot by all the chatter around microbiome, well, the human microbiome, all the press that has been getting over the past decade or so. And on the other side, it's been also influenced a lot by some of the rise of some specific categories of fermented products like craft beer, kombucha in the US. So we'll dive a little bit, into that as well. So Fermentation Affinor story is really based around this idea of smart fermentation. It's a platform that we've developed around screening for specific microbes that are able to enzymatically change the chemistry of specific ingredients or plant-based foods or byproducts. So we are a company that is doing what we like to call biotransformation. We're not a company that's doing synthesis, that's going to use microbe as a tool to produce one specific protein that is then going to be purified and then sold. We are using those small microbes, our allies, really, to change and improve the chemistry of those food products. So our technology platform is based around, on one side, a set of screening tools that we've developed over the years, that leverage high throughput technologies. We've been bringing as much as possible automation into the game. And another side is data science and machine learning as much as possible to bridge the gap between fermentation, between microbiology and flavor chemistry and food science. My co-founder actually is a flavor chemist, and myself a little bit, as an intro, I've been in the biotech/synthetic biology industry for the past 10, 15 years. And I have a PhD in synthetic biology from Harvard and Paris University. And before that, I'm actually an agronomic engineer. And before Afineur, and between my PhD and Afineur, I've launched a consulting company specialized in synthetic biology and this kind of new type of biotechnology that can change a lot of different industries. And after that, I was the CSO of an initial biotech company. So yeah. So the platform technology is really built around leveraging those new type of microbiome biotechnology and AI and food science, flavor and analytical chemistry. We screen for these interesting microbes that are able to enzymatically transform and improve those staple plant-based foods. And we assemble communities of microbes that are able to do this job through fermentation. Once we've refined the community, the actual fermentation process usually takes about 24 to 48 hours, and we make sure that our process seamlessly integrates with any types of downstream food processing, if there's any. So to recap a little bit on the values and on the things that we're developing, we're developing biotransformation technologies to directly tailor and enhance the chemistry of plants, of plant-based commodities, of plant-based ingredients, and of byproducts. There's zero waste generation in our processes. We're using biology, obviously, and chemistry, and I believe, like, if a lot of you are here today in this call, it's because you've realized one way or another that biology is really impacting a lot of our industries. So smart fermentation rely on natural biological process. We are not engineering the strains that we're using. It's non-GMO. It's really just based around isolating, screening for the interesting microbes and assembling those communities of microbes that are able to do the jobs that we want. We don't use solvents. We don't use any type of oil-derived chemicals. So the process is really clean. And the other aspect that I mentioned is over the years, we've realized that there are a lot of latent opportunities around byproducts and co-products coming from the food and ag industry, including cellulosic byproducts. And we've been developing technologies to ferment those byproducts and extract different high-value commodities or ingredients from it, with a big focus on plant-based proteins, on functional fibers, and on sweeteners. So this is a little bit the competitive landscape, and again, it's a way for me to tell you a little bit more about how we're different in this myriad of very interesting players in our industry. So the bottom part of the graph is all of these traditional players in the food industry that are using chemistry to manufacture ingredients. So bottom right are those players that are using transformation or extraction of these raw materials, of botanicals or commodities, to extract interesting ingredients using chemistry. The bottom left are the traditional players that are using mostly using chemical synthesis to create, for example, a flavoring compound, let's say a vanillin molecule for flavoring. So they're using mostly oil-derived chemicals to produce those ingredients or flavoring molecules. So the upper part of the graph are all these kind of like new players, startups, including Afineur, that are leveraging all these new tools from biotechnology, so biology in general. The bottom left, the upper left part are those players that are using genetic engineering. So they are taking a yeast, for example, reprogramming the DNA of this yeast and having this yeast secrete a vanillin molecule to make vanilla aroma. That's the example of Evolva, for example. So we're not doing that. We are directly tailoring and changing and transforming a raw material, not just like the nitrates and rocket, but using biology. I'll dive a little bit more about into this in the next few slides. But we believe that, as we mentioned earlier, we are answering a global trend in our industry, which is a demand for better plant-based foods that are derived from clean processing practices that are natural, plant-based, environmental, and social conscious. And smart fermentation can really address all these aspects. This is a bit of an overview of all the type of projects and products that we've taken on and developed over the past few years. We've worked a lot on functional nutrition, working on novel plant-based proteins, specialty proteins, working on dietary fiber, working a little bit less on vitamins and antioxidants. We started with working, the initial focus of the company was working on commodities and transforming those commodities through fermentation. And we've released a product on for the coffee industry and for the chocolate industry. but we've been working a lot on other types of specialty commodity and commodities in general, including a big focus on grain-based products as well. And yeah, a lot of work on functional ingredients, sweeteners, as I mentioned, a lot, but a bit less also around colors, aromas, and texturants. So the history of Afineur is fairly interesting and fairly unusual, I think, in our industry, in that we started as a B2C company. And over the years, we've switched into a B2B company. So we've been mostly working nowadays with partners, helping them transform ingredients, commodities, or byproducts into higher value ingredients that can solve a number of challenges. So the first few years of the companies were focused around developing a set of consumer products and a brand behind it. We, at the time, a lot of the industry was not as mature as right now, and we thought that it'd be really interesting to go all the way to the finished consumer product, and also develop, I guess, a community of people around the brand, around the company, that we could leverage as a test bench, really as early adopters that we could leverage to iterate based on their feedback. It's been the case with consumer products that we've developed with It Cultured, which is the consumer brand, but we've also been keeping on leveraging this community of really involved consumer for Afineur, and to develop some of the products with our B2B partners. So yeah, so It Cultured, the brand was and still is very focused around transparency, where the plant-based products that we've been commercializing are marketed with the story around fermentation that is upfront, and not in tiny print on the back. We've developed and launched two products. One in the coffee space, one in the chocolate space. The coffee product is a coffee that's a really high-end coffee, where we've worked on the flavor profile of this coffee, where we are able to use lower quality beans to make for a coffee that is still really interesting for the specialty coffee community. So it's a really high-end, really smooth coffee, where we are able to use lower grade Arabica or even Robusta. And we've been working a lot on the flavor profile, especially astringency and bitterness, to lower this astringency of a lot of the lower grade coffee, and have the more interesting flavors shine through. That's on the taste side of this cultured coffee. And on the functional side, we've been addressing another problem that about 15–20% of people have, which is that they are sensitive to the acidity of coffee. It's not necessarily just the acidity, but their stomach is just sensitive to coffee. And that's due to a number of compounds that we've been able to enzymatically reduce to make for a very healthy and stomach-friendly coffee. This product was launched through a Kickstarter campaign that was the most successful food Kickstarter campaign in 2015. And the idea, again, behind Kickstarter was initially to have a community of clients that be really involved with what we were building. The second product is a bit different. It's fairly similar in the things that we've been trying to achieve around flavor and around functionality. But here we've been partnering with a fairly big brand in the specialty chocolate world called Raka. And the idea was to start to explore how It Cultured could become the type of Intel inside of smart fermented product, whereby it's basically like a B2B2C with co-branding on the packaging. The launch was also interesting there, where we only launched initially through e-commerce, and we were selling the product with a control bar. And the idea was, again, to gather thousands of feedback on the product really, really quickly and iterate for this product and for the next generation of products. So these two products are still sold. They're still doing really well. And Eat Cultured, in a way, is a brand that's growing in a very lean way. It's mostly e-commerce and has been supporting the core mission of Afineur to build better plant-based products. So the main focus of Afineur, or one of the main focus right now, is to unlock latent opportunities coming from waste. We are working with partners on a wide range of co-products. And the idea always is to go all the way from byproducts to ingredients that are usually specialty ingredients that are suitable for human nutrition. As of now, we have not been addressing the pet markets, which is something that we could do in the future, but type of ingredient and solution that we've been developing have been enabling us to go all the way to human nutrition. One of the big projects that some of you might have heard of and might have seen in the news is a project that we have around spent distilled grain with one of the biggest beer manufacturers in the world. And the idea here is to leverage this main waste and use biotransformation to recover the protein and the fiber fraction, and to improve the nutritional profile and the flavor profile of this protein. We are achieving really, really interesting results on the nutritional quality of this protein with a really high digestibility, a really interesting amino acid profile that's really favorably competing with some of the best plant-based proteins right now on the market. We've been also working on the taste profile, of course, and yeah, there's a number of other perks alongside those two big challenges that we're addressing. Dietary fiber is, of course, something that we've been working on also on this same co-product. But as you see on the list up there, there's a number of other co-products that we're actively working on. They are not all there. And we've been able to develop very deep and interesting relationships with a number of key industry partners in those different verticals. So that's for the short overview of Afineur and what we're up to. And I believe we'll have time now to take questions and have a discussion around the different points that you'd like me to dive into. Thanks again for listening.
Awesome, and thanks for walking us through that, Camille. Really, really interesting stuff that you guys are working on. So now we're going to begin the question portion of the webinar. So to ask a question, you can use the hand raising icon, and I'll unmute you so you can ask your question in person. Or you can go to the question window on the right side of your screen and type it into the question box. So Camille, again, like I said, really interesting stuff you guys are doing. I guess as you're beginning to shift more to this B2B model, if there are potential customers listening in on this webinar, I think an interesting point, or an interesting point that could require further explanation is really where the business value comes from some of these tailored fermentation processes. So are we, relative to other products that these potential customers might be buying from other suppliers, if they switch to Afineur, would they get cost savings? Would it be a sustainability label? Would it be more natural? Is it higher quality? Where's the value found there?
It's all the above. Really good point, Luke. There's really like two different, I guess we can separate two different business case. One is around improving an ingredient or a commodity that one of you guys in the audience is selling currently, or is developing, or is manufacturing. And the idea here is to use fermentation to improve the flavor profile to make for a higher value ingredient, or to improve the nutritional profile to again make for an higher value ingredient that that also can really benefit from this labeling, as you were mentioning, look around clean, natural, fermented process. So sometimes with our clients, the fermentation process is additive. It comes on top to diversify and get into those kind of like more specialty ingredients. Sometimes it replaces another type of process that our partner has been using up until now. And in this case, it also most of the case includes cost savings. On the other side, so as I was mentioning, we're working more and more with waste. I don't really like this word waste. It's mostly co-products. It's side streams coming from all these manufacturers that haven't found a good use as of yet. And here, fermentation can really unlock new interesting opportunities to basically make more and sell more out of the same starting material, and help you guys, capture or enter potentially new niches within your markets.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, actually. So when you were going through some of your examples, I believe you mentioned a beer project that you're working on where you've been essentially improving the quality of the beer. But are there any examples of relationships that you've had where you are directly taking byproducts that were previously useless or totally disregarded as waste, and you've used the fermentation process to now transform that into a valuable revenue stream for your client?
Absolutely, and actually, the example on the beer side is an example of not improving the beer itself, but reusing a waste. So in the beer manufacturing process, they use malt, which is basically sprouted grain, to get sugar, make basically like sugary water, and this sugary water is going to be used to make the beer. But basically, they infuse this malt in hot water to make this sugary water get all the sugars out of the malt, and then they filter out the malt. And that's the main waste from the beer industry. It's called spent grain or spent distilled grain. And as of now, the use has been really limited for this stuff. Most of the cases, it goes to farms. But breweries have a bit of a hard time finding enough farmers to come and pick it up, and so most of the time, actually, and that's the case in a lot of the industry that we've been looking at, and for a lot of the partners that we've been working with, they actually have to even pay to dispose of those wastes. So here we bring a solution that help them transform this waste into a new ingredient that they can use either internally or resell. And so it's really creating value out of something that was actually costing them before.
Very cool, very cool. And then could you flip back to the competitive landscape slide? I had another question on that.
Of course. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay of a shot. I think
There we
here
go.
we are.
So yeah, again, really great graph here. Definitely a lot of big names here. I'm sure a lot of the listeners here are familiar with. One of the things I found was interesting was that you differentiated here between synthesis and transformation. And so my question here is, do you see the transformation approach as being more advantageous when working with food? And if so, why?
Yeah, it's a really good question again. There's I guess, yeah, there's multiple levels we could answer that. On the one side, on the one side, there are technologies that are enabling you to do two different things. Afineur technology is really good at improving something that already exists, which is basically different types of biomasses. The technologies that the Clarfood, the Perfect Day, the Ginkgo Bioworks, the Evolvas are developing are really good at creating something out of nothing, basically. they are engineering yeast to produce, we mentioned the vanillin example, but a perfect day, for example, they would produce a milk protein, and basically the way that they do that is just they reprogram a yeast, the DNA of the yeast, basically the circuit board of a yeast, for it to produce milk protein. And the way that they then manufacture this protein is by basically just brewing the yeast. And so they add the yeast into a big tank of water, where they have to add a lot of really simple sugars, which is also a cost to them. And then the yeast hopefully produces the milk protein, and then it's purified. So the technologies are doing really different things. On one side you have transformation, and on the other side you have an ex nihilo synthesis. The synthesis route is often better for problems that are requiring solutions that do not necessarily exist in nature. So that's why also all the biopharma industry is looking really closely at the synthetic biology space, because space is able to create new enzymes, new proteins, designing new enzymes, new proteins. But oftentimes there's a pretty high cost behind both the R&D and then the manufacturing of the end target product. With Afineur, we are really focusing on transforming existing biomasses and elevating biomasses, and in a way we are opposing ourselves almost as to other tools in chemistry that are things like solvent extractions or different types of extraction technologies, in that we both facilitate the extraction, but we go beyond that. We also help improve the quality of the final product through the small enzymes and small molecules that the microbes are producing. So yeah, slightly different spaces, and in both cases, biology can really bring interesting solutions. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. One last question here, it looks like. So Rachel's wondering how you're handling the consumer communication around something that could be seen as scary, and might not be well understood. So, for example, one of Rachel's friends called her and was scared to eat food that she bought because it had a mycoprotein in it, and she didn't understand that. And so when you're thinking about a consumer looking at some of these products and they're thinking, oh, this is transformed from waste, how can you communicate that message to the consumer?
Well, I think there are two different challenges. There's one that is potentially coming from a waste, and the other one that is potentially around using biotechnologies. The waste side is easily solved, in that well, as soon as you're reusing a waste, and that you find kind of like a clean supply chain, and most of the time that requires us to work really closely with our partners and help them at some point, once the projects go further down the line, help them basically have a small fermentation facility within their manufacturing process. But yeah, the waste side is easily solved. So it's not necessarily waste as soon as you were using it. And on the other side, it can even be oftentimes an advantage, in that there's also a trend in specialty plant-based food, where consumers are looking for highly sustainable solution, or highly sustainable products, and that's something that some of our partners have chosen to include as part of their story, which I think is really powerful beyond the story around fermentation. And then Rachel, the other question, I guess, I'm guessing the other part of the question is around fermentation or biotechnology in general. And the way that we've been addressing that is through radical transparency, and having a direct line of communication with our early adopters that have become, through the years, but even quicker than that, they've become kind of like evangelists for the brands and for the processes. So the brand that we've developed internally at Cultured is really focused on bringing the fermentation story up front and explaining what we do and what we do differently. There's many layers to this story, to this onion. One that can be seen as really most simple term as kind of like a continuum between traditional fermentation and some of the fermentation that we're doing nowadays. And then there's kind of like the more complex story where we can go into explaining how we tap into the huge biodiversity of microbes that we're only starting to understand and control thanks to all these new tools coming from the small microbiome revolution that is happening. So different layers of the story, but overall it's been very positive to us, and overall it's been driven by a path to market that has been really transparent and where we try to be really, really close to our consumer and have a marketing story that is also really transparent, as I was saying.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for breaking that down for us, Camille. And so to wrap up here, you have the mic here. What else can the audience help you with? How can they find you if they're interested in getting in touch? What's the best way to get in contact?
Yeah, so our website is afineur.com. Maybe I'll go to the last slide so you can see the names. So I'm Camille. You can email me directly at camille@afineur.com. Be more than happy to chat with you and see how we can potentially help you out with different challenges or work together. The way that we usually partner with people, we like to be very open, and we often do actually either joint development agreements and where we really help you figure out a solution for your own vertical, and we go from R&D all the way to helping implement the biomanufacturing process at your place. And we also have sometimes consulting projects which are often more simple but can help you figure out different type of challenges for your own businesses. So Camille@afineur.com, and I'll be more than happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Camille. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to walk us and the rest of the audience through all the exciting work that you guys are doing over at Afineur. And thanks to the rest of our audience for participating in the webinar. If you'd like to learn more about Afineur, please let us know by answering this poll question. We host these calls every week at 3 p.m. Central. You can register for Agrifood Conversations by going to agrifoodconversations.com. A replay of this webinar will be emailed to you in the next 24 hours. If you know of others that may want to see this webinar in replay, they will be able to access it on agrifoodconversations.com within 24 hours. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.